Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
It took a pandemic to bring us back to the microphones. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hell, God knows we all have a lot of free time on our hands right now, for the most part. God bless those of you in the medical industries. This is the Real Chili Podcast. My name is Brian Henry, joined by Mike Lavender. And Mike, let's start with the lowest priority. We suck at podcasting. It's been 2 months.
We do.
It's been 2 months, and we're going to get into why, because it's been our frustrations with this Marquette team. But part of the reason we're podcasting is we don't have a whole lot going on right now, do we?
We don't have a whole lot going on. I think we kind of think that our listeners may be a bit bored wherever you are hopefully sequestered, safe and sound, to a reasonable degree, avoiding those large gatherings, avoiding those parties. We can get into all the minutia for that. But yeah, we felt that this would be a great time. And as you said, no better reason than an international or than a pandemic to spur us to jump back over the pod. And it's been more than 2 months. It's been 2 months and change here.
Oh, 2 months and change. Yeah, way to go. All right, so shame on us. And we'll get into the reasons why in a second. But, I mean, it's not like, God knows, if you're listening to us, you probably listen to a bunch of other podcasts. You've been glued to the news. You don't need to hear Mike and I's thoughts on world events because God knows it's that. But I'll just say this. I mean, it really is just – it's surreal. I mean, the last – from where we were on Monday this past week, when you can think when you woke up and went to work or did whatever the heck you were doing, to where we are as we record this on Saturday night, March 14th. Mike, like, I mean, the world has drastically changed. The silliness that this podcast is based on, our alma mater college basketball team, their season ends. Everyone's season ends. Everyone Division 2, 3, the NBA postponed, the NHL. I mean, it's just it puts things into focus for you real quick, I'd say.
It does, and my mind is actually going back to right now, and I bet you had one of these. I bet you almost every one of our listeners has a moment like this. But I can remember on Wednesday talking to one of my coworkers, and it was just this moment, where you're in a conversation and you're still having it, but it's this moment of realization of, you feel like you're in a movie at some point. And we were talking about Contagion before we hopped on. Folks, maybe don't watch that.
Don't watch it. Just don't watch it. It's good, but God, is it just not now.
But clearly we don't need to relitigate this whole process and how how we got to where we are right now, because we know you're up to speed. But, I mean, that's the context from which we're coming, and that we all had this moment of it flipped from, oh, this is bad, we should be careful, wash your hands a lot, stay away from other people, to, holy shit, we need to be shutting down the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And there's no precedent for this, right? And certainly the scale of what you just talked about, the Masters is postponed, not canceled. The Players' Championship has been canceled this weekend. The scale of the response to this pandemic is massive, but it's also appropriate, right? Like this is an entirely appropriate response.
No doubt.
Has really put we need to talk about it. I don't know if it's put a damper on the Marquette season in some ways. I don't know if I should say this. It feels like the perfect ending to the Marquette season.
And in some respect, saved it from the ending that we thought it was potentially going. That's me being the negative Nancy in the room, but pardon me, we're not going to. We'll give us another couple minutes here, and we're going to we are going to talk basketball, because that's what you came here for. And crap, like, I'll be honest, I want to talk about anything else but this. But to your point about unprecedented, I mean, you think about our simple lives, right? Like you and I, this is terrifying to say, we're pushing our mid-30s now. We're both 32, 33 years old. In our lifetime, we saw SARS, we saw the swine flu, we saw H1N1 about 10 years ago. And at no point did it ever even remotely touch this. I mean, I went to 4 stores on Thursday and watched them people cleaning out a Trader Joe's. It was unbelievable. It was like you said, it was something out of a movie. You're just like, I really do think, and that maybe this is too much the optimist in me. I do think people are going to chill out. Like, okay, like there's enough to go around. We got plenty of abundance in this country. Like, if you're out there hoarding hand sanitizer and toilet paper, like, shame on you. Like, just chill out for 10 seconds. Like, you don't need 5 years worth. Like, just get enough for a couple weeks and then reassess. Like, my God,
the hoarding is a bit much. I mean, I understand
it's
the
wild.
instinct, but the hoarding is a bit much, especially with people with the Lysol and the Purell. Like, I get it, but science has shown that washing your hands is more effective than Purell. So chill the fuck out, people. Yeah. But also, putting this in context, you mentioned H1N1, SARS, and these other things. I think the most recent viral pandemic that we can point to that is on the scale of what we're talking about here was the AIDS epidemic.
Right.
Was AIDS in the 1980s, right, when you and I were born. And so that gives you – and that I don't think – I haven't compared, mortality rates and some of those things, but it certainly feels like this is as much of a moment as that was at that time when people kind of took a step back and said, wow, whoa, what's happening here? So it gives you a sense of the magnitude of what we're talking about. But certainly I can't think of any precedent for any sort of cancellation of sporting events on this scale. I mean, you obviously have
September 11th was about the only other thing you can reach for. And that was baseball, because at that time, football was going by that point. But
they still played they canceled a couple of games, right? But they
pushed everything back a week. I mean, they resumed. But that was a sense where we saw the sporting calendar, go and that's let's as we gave you that spiel that you've heard from every single other radio show, television show. Let's narrow it to why you're listening to this, and it's college basketball and Marquette, Mike. And I want to start from looking at it, going for the 30,000-foot view. Like, holy shit! Like, the NCAA tournament, the foundation of sporting entertainment in the month of March. It's got its own, trademark name in March Madness. It is literally one of those. It's like the Super Bowl in that it gets every casual fan that doesn't pay attention to the sport all year, but for whatever reason, it's reached a point where we get the country for basically 3 straight weekends, from Thursday to Sunday, taking a field of 68 down to 2 and to 1. It's something that I grew up on just loving. I know most of you did. Obviously, going to Marquette only enhanced that and gave us a direct team to love and root for as that tournament played out. And it's gone. And that by no means, trust me, we got bigger fish to fry. But God, is that a bummer? I mean, it just crushes you to know that that's not there in the moments that you get from it every year.
Yeah, and when I think back to some of the text message conversations that I've had, not necessarily with you guys over the past week, but speaking to kind of what you just said about the prominence of March Madness amongst people who don't give a shit about basketball generally, people weren't texting me about, hey, Mike, did you see the NBA got canceled? Hey, Mike, did you see the Masters? It was all about the NCAA March Madness. And these are from people who either I work with or know through other means. That is what I think it's interesting to talk about the role that sports played in this, because I know we're immersed in it. But the way that the cancellation of March Madness, and I think the NBA to some degree, got the message out into broader America of what was happening, there was something happening there. But I agree, the moments that we're not going to have, you look up and down kind of the list of seniors that we've been seeing circulating on Twitter of Marcus Howard, Miles Powell, Cassius Winston at Michigan State. There were so many players that aren't going to have this stage, and even the conference tournament stage, right? Even though the Big East played a few games and a half.
Pardon my earmuffs for the young kids in the room, but shouts to the Big East for just not giving a fuck about the coronavirus for like 15 minutes and just, we're going to play our game, whatever. St. John's, get out there. That was hilarious.
It was a bad look.
I know it was bad, but I was laughing and loving it while they were doing it. I was like, this is great. Everyone else saying screw it, and we've got freaking Tim Brando and Jim Jackson yelling at a table about St. John's help side defense. The entire world is shutting down. And oh my God, like that was just.
And I don't even think they acknowledged it. I don't even think.
Rob, if you were watching, Rob Stone at the desk basically did an update. It's like the Big 12, the Pac-12, the ACC, everyone's canceling their tournaments, and let's go back courtside to Tim Brando. And you're like, wait, what? Like, what's going on here? And they played the rest of the half, and then they bagged the game at halftime, and it was just like, there was barely anybody in the building. They had basically gone to just family, and for some reason we had to have the cheerleaders and the flipping mascots there. I didn't totally understand that.
It's a big part of the sports experience, I guess.
I guess that's essential personnel these days. But that was just surreal. But to what you now, as you start to direct it to us, like let's make it about Marquette. Yeah, we all know how the season was trending, and we're gonna do. Everybody, just relax. We're gonna do the Marcus Howard pod is coming. The
celebration pod.
Yes, celebration, but also some hard questions to be asked, and sure. the Wojo pod. There's questions to be asked and discussions to be had, and thoughts. I know amongst the rotating set of hosts we have here of others that want to get in. That needs to. We'll have that discussion. And looking to next year and what that's going to mean. But the fact that, a guy like Marcus Howard, who obviously, let's just focus, just an incredible player that we've had the privilege to watch for 4 years, didn't get an opportunity to play in the Big East tournament and get a chance to win an NCAA tournament game and have a moment, so to speak. He really hadn't had one yet at that time of the year. He's done everything else. God, wouldn't that – I mean, I think all of us deep down, despite how frustrated we've all been with this team as for the second straight year it limped down the finish line, I think all of us held out hope of like, well, flip, not maybe because Kemba Walker was a pro and obviously is still doing it in the pros right now, and I don't think it's fair to compare Marcus to that level. But there's always a little, there's that spark of hope. It's like, God, can he just catch it for one weekend and torch two teams for 40-plus points, and we make our way to the Sweet 16? I don't care what seed we are, and we're all hugging and celebrating. And that was out there, right? Like we all were hoping for that. We all had that in the deep recesses of our brain, whether we didn't want to believe it. And they don't get a chance at it. And again, there's bigger fish to fry. We know that. But that's a bummer, right? Like that's from a Marquette standpoint, that's a big bummer.
It is a big bummer to not have the potential for that to happen. I think every time Marcus Howard takes the court, that is in the back of your head, whether it's a regular season game, non-conference, Big East tournament game, or NCAA tournament game. You're sitting there thinking, mostly out of necessity, because if he doesn't, we're probably fucked, but hoping for Marcus Howard to go off. But Brian, in not being able to have that chance, yes, is disappointing. But frankly, the more predominant thought in my mind, and I want to ask you this because I feel like you said something earlier in the season that resonated with me, that I was thinking the same thing. We agreed that there was just something that didn't draw us to this team, that didn't keep us locked in and engaged. And we were saying that in December. And that thought has stuck with me throughout the entirety of this season. I've been more lackadaisical in my enjoyment of this team than I have in over 10 years, or this program. And I'm not a dumb guy. I'm not doing that for any reason, other than the fact that there was something with this team that I couldn't shake, that frankly, I didn't have high hopes, heading into the tournament. When I saw the 6 out of 7 at the end of the season, was I shocked? No. Was I disappointed? Of course. Tremendously disappointed. But there was something about the fundamental nature of the team this season, for as much as I love all the individual characters, that it just didn't add up. And, we can try to diagnose why that was. I don't know if we'll ever get the right answer. But anyway, that's where I am. But do you feel the same way?
You're not wrong. If I remember the pod, we really got into that. I believe it was after we got blitzed by Creighton in the opening game of league play, and we were all guilty of reactionary. I mean, it was one game, right?
Right.
But it was very. There's ways. There are games you just go out there and get your ass kicked, and that will happen, especially in this conference. There's a lot of good teams. They were on the road, and hey, Creighton was pretty freaking good this year. Right. I mean, Creighton has had second weekend of the NCAA tournament written all over them. I mean,
as was Wisconsin, who also cleaned our clocks, right?
Right.
So I mean, in Hall. So we had a good schedule.
I think the frustrating part is there was always something there, and we're not going to go back and rehash it. But we all know that this team was potentially going to return top 15 to top 10 with its whole roster. You have two players transfer out due to whatever reason you want to say. So there was always a hole there, and clearly over a large sample size, it was supposed to be Kobe McEwen. Holy smokes, is that a separate pod to have? God love you, Kobe, but wow. Kobe McEwen was not a second scorer for Marcus Howard. Sakar and him, God love him. Like, again, his career's over. He had moments he could do it, but goddamn, he was not going to be the second one to do it. And if Theo John's getting that many post touches, that's a problem because he's going one direction, and that's pretty much it, right? So, yeah, this team was flawed. Getting to the NCAA tournament, I think if I go back to the start of the year, I'm not trying to play revisionist history. I'm pretty sure I said, I think the goal is just to get in, and they pretty much had done that even with their disastrous finish. But, Mike, I want to back it up to I think you can just put it into a microcosm because we've seen this from this program over the last few years. Last weekend of the season, last week of the season, DePaul and St. John's in front of you, right?
God.
You got to beat them both. You beat them both, you get to 10-8 in the league, you had a winning record. You're guaranteeing yourself at worst case an 8 seed, maybe a 7. You give yourself a shot to win your first game, right? You're a better team than both those teams. You're better than both of them.
Yeah, and just when you walk on the court, you're a better team, right?
And you have a 5-point lead at DePaul that gets away from you, and you're down by 20 in the first half at St. John's. I know anybody can beat anybody, but there are certain stretches at different times of the year. Those were, to me, two of the most difficult losses to swallow, and I think for a lot of people listening to this podcast and this fan base was a breaking point for them with this coaching staff and with some of the players on the roster because that didn't make sense. We're better than those programs. We're better than those teams right now. And you went in on your biggest games of the year and you got beat by them. And that, to me, when you go back to why I wasn't there all year, it was because of a moment like that. And we had texted it. We said it. I didn't think they were going to lose those games. But what did I say? I was like, we're going to be idiots and lose one of these two. Because we're idiots. That's kind of like what we were as a team.
Right.
And we did that. And not only that, we lost both of them. And that just, what a gut punch. And I still wish Marcus had a shot in the Big East tournament, the NCAA, to give us a something good to taste and not end that way. But,
And that is why, not endorsing a pandemic or anything like that, but that is why I wasn't really looking.
Wait, are you about to be on the side endorsing the pandemic? Go on, please.
I'd like to blaze my own path here.
Yeah.
That is why, as sad as I am to not have basketball anymore, I wasn't looking forward to seeing Marquette participate in those tournaments, just to be completely honest, because we just lost 6 of 7. A lot of that was to really good teams, Providence, Creighton, Villanova, Seton Hall. Like, that is a gauntlet, right? Those are good teams. So I'm not saying there wasn't good competition. It's just it seemed that the life had been sucked out of this team, as you indicated, particularly by those last 2 wins. So to not see Marcus Howard and some of those other guys, Sakar, even Jace Johnson, who, I agree. I have a soft spot for Jace. I really liked his play. I liked what he brought to the table.
Jace gave great minutes late. He did. For what he was capable of. I thought he gave tremendous energy and was there. And he was open about it when he came to Marquette. He had never gotten to play in the NCAA tournament and wanted to do that at some point in his career. Yeah. And he was probably on a team that was going to do that. And unfortunately, it's a guy like that. Jace, I mean, I don't know, maybe who knows what country. You never know when you're that tall. You can probably play professional basketball. But, I mean –
Australia comes to mind.
But Jace isn't going to – nobody in the NBA is looking at Jace Johnson, right? So, like, that's a guy, like, you're playing at the highest stage in your country amongst your family and friends. Like, that's a bummer. His career's now, like, his collegiate career's over unless they come up with some kind of wacky eligibility rule for next year, which would be fascinating.
Which sounds like they're talking about.
They're talking about, right. So you never know. But that's I'd say I think we've accomplished at least that's the biggest picture look at the way the season ended. And while it was a bummer, it was reality.
I'm really sad you missed my Harry Froling joke in there. I hope when we post this and you listen. Did
I miss a Harry Froling joke?
You missed a Harry Froling joke.
Oh, I was looking at a text message. Son of a gun.
Oh, well, of course you fucking were.
I shut down. Shit.
All right. That was the big picture look. And like, look, I think you mentioned this off the top, Brian, as you look at your text again. We'll be diving into, hopefully, if we can get these pods out. I guess we never talked about why we weren't getting these pods out. But
we did record 2 pods between now and then and had disastrous technical failures that prevented us from being able to post them.
Technical and just, like lack of giving a shit, like recording it and then editing it and just couldn't get it out,
Yeah, we failed. So no other excuse there. But you're right. I think we owe the people over the next couple weeks here. I think our reactions to the season, specifically looking at I think all 3 seniors, the Jace Johnson section will be short, but Sakar and Im's been part of Marquette for 5 years. Marcus Howard for 4 seasons. These guys have been in our lives. That is worthy of extensive conversation. And, of course, this coaching staff is worthy of our discussion and evaluation because we know a lot of you out there have thoughts. We certainly have them. I don't think this is the immediate time and place to dive into that, but refresh the feed here over the next week or so as we all of us are working from home at different points in some capacity, and we'll be trying to knock out these podcasts at night and fill our evenings with something exciting. You know what? While the world is going nuts around you, it doesn't hurt to have something to distract yourself. So even though sports aren't being played, we can still ease our minds a little bit. Just goof around.
Maybe we should crowdsource a list of topics that we could just talk about ad nauseum. We never posted that Edmund Fitzgerald blog, which was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe we need to that discussion. Maybe we need to look outside the Real Chili. See the Real Chili community, get some guests on the pod, let people share. We got nothing but time.
We could get I noticed on Twitter, just spitballing here, I noticed Dwayne Wilson was playing overseas. Seemed like he was really impacted by the pandemic, obviously. So that could be an interesting interview. We have a history of rich interviews here on the Real Chili podcast. There could be, just let's think outside the box here, Brian.
That sounds like an excellent plan.
I'm jotting down your text messages and then
I am. No, I'm in for that. So, all right. Well, Real Chili Nation out there, be safe, wash your hands, take care of each other, and if you're sick, for the love of God, stay home. Come on now, be smart.
Flatten the curve, people. It's not about you. Don't be the Corona tough guy. Don't be the Corona tough girl. Stay home, flatten the curve, protect your grandma, protect your grandpa, and we'll all be better in a few months.
Absolutely, no doubt. Well, for Mike Lavender, I am Brian Henry. This is the Real Chili podcast. We're back. Thanks for listening. I wish it was under better circumstances, but you know what? We definitely owe the people this, so we're off. We'll talk to you all in the coming weeks. Go Marquette.